Oh my lord, she is basically sitting on his lap. I'm Caroline Mitchell, former police detective and crime thriller author, and I have spent years investigating high-risk domestic abuse cases, and I cannot leave Lynette Hooker's disappearance alone. Because the more that comes out about Brian Hooker's story, the more it falls apart. And there are 5 things that I need to walk you through today. And the first one, well, it explains why investigators haven't just refused to close this case, they're treating it as a crime scene. Police, they are closing in, and this case hasn't slowed down. It's moved into a more serious phase. And as a former cop, I call this a pincer movement, because there's 2 different investigations closing in from different directions. On one side, you've got the Royal Bahamas Police Force, and they're the boots on the ground. Now, they've already spoken to Brian at length, first as a witness, and then while he was under arrest as a suspect. But there's limited time to hold someone without charge. And that's not the same as being cleared, it just means they need more time. Meanwhile, across in the US, the focus is completely different. And this is where the Coast Guards come in. And I love that there are other agencies and teams working on this, because the Coast Guards, well, their approach is slower but far more forensic. They're examining the phone records, the GPS data, financial activity, digital footprints, and all of that is solid evidence. And in terms of interviews, both sides can speak to Brian Hooker, but not in the same way. So in the Bahamas, they had the power to keep him in custody. And as far as I know, and correct me if I'm wrong, in the US it's voluntary unless there's enough evidence to issue a warrant. So while someone like Brian could think they were safe leaving the scene of the incident, US agents were waiting patiently for him to land. So if this case progresses, and hopefully it will, where an arrest happens will tell you a lot. An arrest in the Bahamas usually means physical evidence, and it would take a lot for them to have to drag him back over there. So it could be something like something they found on the boat, or something tying events like directly to that location. Now, an arrest in the US suggests something else, so it's worth keeping an eye out. So that tells you that the digital evidence like the timeline, the GPS, or even the flares has started to contradict his account in a way prosecutors can prove. And once someone is back on US soil, there's no need for an extradition. They land and the case effectively lands with them, which is the great thing about this case, because usually crimes are only investigated in the country where they took place. So the Bahamas will handle the scene and the really immediate evidence, but the Coast Guard, they focus on what's called the maritime side, which is the vessel or the ship, the dinghy, the data and the movement that night, particularly Brian's movement. But it gets better, because then the FBI might step in to support with forensic analysis or coordinate between countries. And this is a high priority case, and given all the media attention, the pressure is on. And that's where YouTube true crime videos actually help Lynette, because the more attention to her case there is, the more pressure there is on police to solve it. And above all of that sits the US Attorney's Office. And I know this is a lot to take in, especially for me. I had to research it because I'm in the UK. But when you really think about it, all of these different agencies are working to help Lynette Hooker, and all of that expertise all working together. In cases like this, nothing's left to chance. And I have to add, I know I've said it before in video 1, but he has not been charged with anything. We're just talking theories. So as far as the police are concerned, the digital data will obviously be the strongest, because there's no arguing with it. And that's unless Lynette turns up, of course. And I know I said it in my last video that it would be very difficult unless they have strong evidence. But we don't know what they have, and they're certainly not going to tell us. Now, Brian said the incident happened on the dinghy, not the yacht. And Brian used an app called Navionics, I think that's what it's called, Navionics, on his phone. But basically, it was either on his phone or his tablet, and it was used to track his route. Now, he actually shared screenshots of his track with friends and the media to prove where he went. But here's what's interesting. The app records speed as well. So if Brian said he was paddling and drifting, but the GPS shows he was using or moving at a speed of 4 knots, which would be like the speed of a motor, then the data might just catch him in a lie. The electronics have reportedly been handed over to US federal authorities for really deep dive forensics to scrutinise it, because the Bahamas, it said, they lack the really specialised labs to crack the encrypted smart devices.
Coast Guard investigators seek to question the owners of this sailboat moored near the Hooker's vessel when she went missing. Officials believe they may have information relevant to the investigation.
Great news, everyone.
Now, here's the second thing that I want to talk about, Brian's lawyers. And yes, he has not one, but two. And really, I want you to watch this clip to see if you notice anything. Brian's lawyer's behaviour really stood out for me.
Mr. Brian Hooker has been released. He should be walking out shortly.
With any conditions?
I'm not sure yet. I'm going to have a quick word with him inside before he walks out. They had no evidence and they had no choice but to release him.
She said that police have no evidence, but she doesn't seem to know that conditions are in place. So
how does Brian describe his relationship with his wife? How did it begin?
We haven't really discussed that.
Has he talked to you while in custody about the moments before and after Lynette's disappearance?
No, as I mentioned, we have not gone into that discussion. Generally, once we have generally when we have a client in custody, we would take general information, and after the client is released, then we would go into more details. He has categorically denied ever hurting Lynette, and he said he would never hurt her, and throughout this whole process, he has denied any involvement in her disappearance or any wrongdoing.
She doesn't say Brian Hooker is innocent or my client is innocent. She says he is saying it was an accident. And that really made me perk up. I mean, does it mean that the lawyer is covering their own tracks because they don't trust Brian Hooker's story? I mean, they're reporting his account, not vouching for it, aren't they? And maybe it is standard lawyer behaviour not to say my client is innocent. So, fair enough, I'll give them that. But I do want you to watch their body language here. Now, oh my lord, she is basically sitting on his lap. I mean, look at her staring him out. She is very uncomfortable with this interview. Now, watch here as she ends the interview after just 6 minutes, tapping him on the arm like he's a small child.
I know that you had an incident on...
I'm sorry. It's really difficult for him now. I don't mean to interrupt, but I'm sorry. Sure. We have to end it.
Really capable of just turning away from this.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for having us.
I appreciate it. Is there any final thing that you would like to say before?
Thank you. No more.
And I have dealt with many solicitors, as we call them, or lawyers in police interviews. Usually they're like making notes, just listening in, sitting a good distance apart. And there's no way they could end a police interview like this. They can advise their clients because that's their job, but police ultimately control the interview. So someone asked me, why did Brian Hooker have so many TV interviews when he came out, when he was released by police? Well, some people say it's to cement the narrative, to get sympathy from the public, or to even sway any future jury. But that could seriously backfire on him, and I think in this case it did. So on to point 3. Now, this is a physical reality check, the Marine training. Now, I know I have mentioned this in the first video, but please just spare me a minute to really look at the training that Marines go through. These are amazing people, and I have nothing but admiration for them. And it's a good thing I didn't need to be a swimmer to join the police, because I would not have stood a chance. Oh my goodness, well, look at that. Even looking at this makes me anxious. And how they're managing, or literally holding their breath underwater. They're in the dark, they're holding each other underwater. Brian, he would have had this training and more, which makes his alleged helplessness so hard for the rest of us to believe. I mean, is it just me? Am I wrong? Let me know in the comments. If you're an ex-Marine with a few drinks in you, a little creaky in the bones, do you forget your training or does it stay with you for life? I would have thought it was really instinctual. I know like there's things I learnt in the police and it really changed me as a person. I always carried it with me. But obviously there's a massive difference between Marine training. But I would imagine if you've had that sort of underwater training, it's instinctual to just in an emergency to jump into the water and save that person. But on to point 4. I've had some very interesting updates in Lynette Hooker's case since my first video. Apparently there was 2 life jackets still in the dinghy, unused that night and not even thrown out to sea. I think he threw out a float which was later recovered, but that's all that floated up in the sea. And there was 2 dispensed flares. Now, Brian said that he set them off a little later after Lynette disappeared, but the timeline, it said, and the location doesn't add up. And it said there are possible witnesses who've seen them being launched from the Soulmate boat, not the dinghy. But then there's the question of Lynette's watch. I mean, which one did police actually recover from the yacht? Because I know I mentioned in the first video, but apparently Lynette had 2 watches. She had one green one and one pink one. Now, in the photo we saw from the day of the incident, she was apparently wearing her pink Apple Watch. But it's also said that Brian bought her a watch. It wasn't an Apple Watch. It was a green watch and it didn't fit her properly. And she was meant to give it to her daughter. And her daughter came to visit and forgot to take it with her. I really wish she had taken it with her because now we know police seized a watch, but we don't know which one it was. So was it the green watch that Brian had given her, or was it the pink watch that she had been wearing that day? And you do have to be so careful with online information, as not all of it, or even much of it, is verified. And some of it, and I've been really following this investigation, some of it can be a real stretch, which is why we need to keep an open mind. And there have been comments about lights coming from their boat that night and flashes. Now, again, I've looked at that. Oh, it's so hazy though. Again, you really do have to be careful with the narrative, don't you? You have to be careful to have an open mind because we really don't know what happened that night. So what about Brian Hooker's iPhone? So Brian said his phone didn't work because he could only connect calls via Wi-Fi. But almost all smartphones now connect through emergency SOS through satellite. And that means even without Wi-Fi or a SIM card, a phone can often hit a satellite or an emergency cell tower to signal for help. And you know, it might not be right. I am looking at this incident through the lens of someone who has safeguarded high-risk victims of domestic abuse and stalking for almost a decade. And when I say high risk, I mean people who are most likely to be murdered by their partners. I've safeguarded, I've conducted interviews, I've conducted exhaustive paperwork, files, gone to court, the whole shebang. So I do have a lot of experience. Well, sadly, I have too much experience in this. I know how everyone feels. We feel so strongly about this case. And it's not that there's a witch hunt. We care about Lynette Hooker. She feels like someone we could know. Just a woman who was out trying to make the best of her life, you know, and her daughter in particular and her family. We care about them and we're not buying it. But we have to go through each theory. So here we are. Maybe he is telling the truth. Maybe there was a freak wave. Maybe he was too drunk or too scared to jump into the water. And maybe he was out searching, drifting at sea that night. They've had a few drinks that day. I know they were out different places. I know in many photos he has a beer in his hand. So it's nothing to say they weren't day drinking before, you know, they went to their final destination. I think Lynette was gearing up to leave him. In fact, we know Lynette was gearing up to leave him. There are allegations that she apparently had a one-way flight booked. And I mentioned, I don't know if the flight was actually booked or she was going to book it, but family has said she was going. She had enough. She probably didn't feel safe. Her last time in that area, it was a dream. You know, even her friend said she was embarrassed. Just don't ever be embarrassed to leave. Just go. But she was embarrassed about what happened and she tried to leave so many times. And I've seen that again so many times with people. But eventually they leave.
I haven't heard from him.
Is it odd to you that he hasn't contacted you at all?
That he's innocent, yeah. She says, I can't take any more, Mom. Get on a plane and come home. She says, I want my stuff. And I said, I want you. She bought a ticket, but she never came.
What was it like to sail together? fantastic. We're more like co-captains.
I've even seen interviews from the neighbours. And the neighbours saw them as a regular couple. And that's why things like this can, for neighbours, be hard to understand because you don't know what goes on behind closed doors. So according to friends, he had blown through all of his money. Now, she had a $650,000 retirement fund. And she was building up to telling him that she was leaving. But Brian was not in a good mood. Again, theoretical, I'm surmising. We're telling a story here. Hey, I'm a crime author. Give me a story. But there was nowhere to let off steam. And also my experience comes in here. If you were in an enclosed space, and I know it was at sea, but I still call that an enclosed space with a domestic abuse offender, very, very dangerous place to be. And remember, he had a history of this with her and with his stepdaughter, actually raising the child a foot in the air. He could have killed her. And it's been reported, and you can see the reports for yourself. He jumped up from the table. She ran out of the room and into the entryway. Brian ran after her, caught up with her by the stairs. She turned around and he grabbed her round the neck and picked her up by the neck, slammed her against the wall and started choking her. He was holding her above his head, yelling, "Don't ever say that again, do you understand?" She said, "Yes." Then he yelled, "Say yes, sir." And she said, "Yes, sir." And I don't know if that's something to do with his former training as a Marine. It sounds like it, doesn't it? That this whole "yes, sir, you must obey my command" type thing. But if you ever find yourself in a position where someone puts their hands around your throat, please get the hell out of there, because these situations, they rarely end well. And we may never know what really happened to Lynette Hooker that night, but we do know that Brian left the Bahamas quick sharp. Now, his lawyer would have known that the US Coast Guard and the FBI are closing in on digital forensics, and Brian used a family emergency to legally exit what we call the primary jurisdiction, the Bahamas, before a formal hold could be placed on his passport, because these things can happen. So, okay, there's just one more thing we need to talk about, and it's a question that I've been asked many times by my viewers. Did Brian actually love Lynette? Well, in my experience, again, yes, I think they loved each other. I really do. And I know, again, please don't cancel me. Don't cancel me. But honestly, listen to me. These things can happen. There's a very close line between love and hate. Unless, I mean, people have personality disorders, and obviously I'm not a psychologist. I don't know if he had a personality disorder. I think the drinking was a way of self-medicating. And it could be issues he'd had from, it could have been his Marine training or PTSD or just his upbringing, or just maybe he was just like a drink and couldn't control his temper. But people do, in their own way, love each other. They were together 25 years. And yes, they had a rocky marriage, but from what I've seen from other people and accounts and witness accounts, on the surface they appeared happy. And I'll tell you why I think this as well. Please, again, don't go too hard on me in the comments. I'm trying to explain it so it makes sense to people. When I dealt with people like this, and you try and say, the big question people have is, why do they stay with these people, these awful monsters? Why do they stay with them? Because they're not monsters all the time. And they used to say to me, when it's good, it's so, so good. But when it's bad, it's unbearable. And as long as I'm having more good times than bad, I'm okay. I'm with it. I'm staying with it. And that's a very dangerous game of roulette to play. Because these men would love bomb, and they'd be romantic, and they had these grand gestures that their other boyfriends might never have had. They would treat them like queens. They would go so over the top and be so romantic and so amazing. But when it got bad, it got really, really bad. It got dangerous. And that's why after it happened, they would then be so remorseful. I mean, they'd be begging forgiveness. And this is my experience, I'm not making this up, they would be crying, then the flowers would come and the tears would come, and I'll get help, I'll get counselling, I have a problem. And obviously they did give up alcohol, so that could have been, most likely was as a response to a big blow up where she got scared. I'll give up alcohol. And again, because they want to stay together, they want to be happy, and the perpetrator is happy as long as the other person does what they are told. And It's when the other person starts to say, you're too controlling. I'm not happy in this relationship anymore. And the fights begin and things and the friction, and it's all escalating and leading to one thing. That's my experience of it. So yes, I think in his own way he did love her, and I think in his own way he is grieving, but equally when you watch him being interviewed, you can tell he's caring a lot more for himself. As someone who has reviewed countless cases, I have my opinions, but I want to hear yours, and do let me know in the comments below. And when people say to me, I've written too much, you can never write too much on my channel, keep them coming. I love hearing them. And if you're interested in some behind the scenes information, my membership is open now. Otherwise, just like and subscribe the videos. It really helps me to get seen. Guys, I have a doozy of a case that I'm working on at the moment. You won't want to miss. So check in maybe once a week if you don't see the notification. Thanks a million to all my new subscribers. I am loving the community of true crime detectives that we're building here. And if you're interested in reading one of my books, many of them are free on Amazon Prime, or maybe you'd even like to write one of your own. The links are below. But listen, until next time, thanks again for tuning in. Really appreciate it. So until next time, mind yourself and bye-bye for now.